Captain Marcus Graves stood on the command deck of the Prometheus, staring out at the swirling, blue-tinted clouds of the blue Deathworld through the observation window. The planet looked serene from orbit, almost beautiful in a way, its deep azure hues swirling with erratic energy storms and patches of radiation. Yet every scan of the surface had confirmed one thing. This was a death sentence for any living creature foolish enough to set foot on its surface. "Captain," a voice broke his reverie. It was Commander Jake Thorne, the ship's second-in-command, his voice tight with concern. "The surface team is reporting in. They've been on the ground for 6 hours now. No casualties. No signs of distress. In fact, they're thriving." Graves turned slowly, blinking as if he hadn't quite heard the words. "Thriving? What do you mean thriving?" Jake's brow furrowed. "They're alive, Captain. Not just alive, but adapting. They're reporting normal vitals. No signs of oxygen deprivation, no poisoning from the atmosphere, no biological issues. It's like they've become part of the environment." A low murmur of disbelief spread among the officers on the bridge. Graves clenched his jaw. The blue Deathworld was a scientific curiosity, but it was also a cursed place. Every probe, every expedition, alien or human, had ended in tragedy. No one had ever survived more than a few hours. No one. "That's impossible," Graves muttered, turning back toward the window. "I've seen the reports. I've read the horror stories. The planet doesn't let anyone live for long." "I know," Jake said. "But, Captain, they're asking for reinforcements. Not for evacuation. They want more supplies to study the ecosystem, to collect samples." "There." Graves cut him off with a raised hand. "No, get me a direct line to the surface. Now." As the comms officer worked to establish the link, Graves' mind raced. There had to be a mistake. There had to be. No creature, no matter how hardy, could survive a world like this. Not without paying a price. The screen flickered to life, and Graves' heart nearly stopped when he saw the face of his lead scientist, Dr. Sophie Larson. She was sweating, her hair a wild mess, but her eyes were wide with excitement. "Captain, you won't believe it," she said, her voice breathless. We're adapting to it. It's not just survivable, it's changing us. We're evolving." Graves felt a chill. "What do you mean?" Before he could finish, Sophie's voice cut out, replaced by static. Then the message abruptly ended. "Commander, get a team ready," Graves ordered, his voice low. "We're going down there. We need to know what's happening. And if it's true, we need to figure out why." The Prometheus descended through the thick atmosphere of the blue Deathworld, its hull groaning under the strain as turbulence rattled the ship. Captain Graves stood at the front of the bridge, hands clenched around the rail, watching the jagged landscape below. Massive storm clouds swirled in the distance, crackling with energy, while bizarre, biomechanical creatures moved across the shifting terrain like something out of a nightmare. "Ready to land, Captain." Lieutenant Elise Carter's voice broke through the tension in the air. "We've got a green zone identified, about 30 clicks north of the initial landing site. Looks stable, relatively." Graves nodded, though the unease knowing it in hadn't dissipated. He had seen firsthand what this planet could do. The thought of humanity evolving on such a deadly world was almost more terrifying than the planet itself. His mind raced. What kind of adaptation would this planet impose on them? As the Prometheus touched down, the ground trembled. A strange vibration thrummed beneath their boots, resonating through the ship's floor like a heartbeat. Graves, Carter, and a small team of scientists, including Dr. Emily Hayes, prepared to disembark. Graves had always prided himself on keeping a level head, but the thought of what awaited them was unsettling. The hatch opened, and the oppressive, humid air of the blue Deathworld slammed into them. The sky above was a sickly shade of violet, and the atmosphere was thick with something almost alive, a presence that made the air itself feel heavier, as though the planet were watching them. Elise's breath caught, but she remained focused, stepping forward as the team followed her. As they made their way to the original landing site, the first thing that struck them was the silence. No wind, no sounds of alien life. The usual chaotic backdrop of this world, the shrieks of predatory beasts and the crashing of tectonic plates, was absent. Instead, everything was eerily still, almost as if the planet was holding its breath. The survivors were camped out near an ancient ruin, hidden beneath layers of vines and moss. The structure was colossal, its shape too perfect, too geometric to have been formed by natural forces. The surface shimmered faintly, almost like the ruin was alive. Dr. Hayes moved forward first, her eyes wide with wonder. This is no ordinary ruin," she whispered. "These markings, they predate all known civilizations. And look at this material. It's unlike anything we've ever encountered. Almost organic." Graves frowned. "Keep your eyes peeled. We're not here for a history lesson." But as they moved deeper into the site, Elise felt a chill run up her spine. The energy in the air was tangible now. Something was watching them. And it wasn't just the planet. There was something else here. Something ancient. Suddenly, a voice echoed in Elise's mind, a whisper so faint it was almost imperceptible. "We've been waiting for you." Her heart skipped a beat. She turned, eyes wide, but the others were too busy studying the ruins to notice. A strange, unsettling feeling settled over the team. Something about this place was wrong, and it was becoming clearer by the second. They had just stumbled upon the true reason humanity was surviving on this world. And it wasn't just evolution. The ruins loomed over them, silent and imposing, as if the walls themselves were watching. Elise Carter felt the hairs on the back of her neck prickle. The whisper she'd heard in her mind, so faint yet undeniably present, still echoed in her thoughts. "We've been waiting for you." It wasn't just our imagination. Something on this planet was aware of their presence. "Did anyone else hear that?" Elise asked, her voice unsteady. The others didn't seem to notice her unease. Dr. Emily Hayes was already hunched over an ancient tablet, her fingers tracing its smooth surface with reverence, while Commander Jake Thorne scanned the area, still vigilant but seemingly unaffected by the growing tension. "I didn't hear anything," Jake replied, though there was a hint of doubt in his voice. "But something's definitely off. We need to move carefully." Graves motioned for the team to proceed, though he couldn't shake the sense of being drawn into something far larger than they could comprehend. As they ventured deeper into the ruins, the strange, organic material of the walls seemed to pulse with a subtle rhythmic beat. It was as though the very stone was alive, and something inside was waiting. It wasn't long before they stumbled upon the first of the survivors, the ones who had remained on the planet since the Prometheus crash-landed. Their camp was set up in the center of the ruin, and as Graves approached, he couldn't help but notice how different they seemed. Sophie Larson, the lead scientist, stood at the front of the group, her posture straighter, more alert than the last time he saw her. Her skin had taken on an almost iridescent quality, faintly glowing under the strange blue light that bathed the area. Her eyes, normally a deep brown, now had a faint golden hue, as if something beneath the surface was shifting. "Captain." Sophie greeted him with a strange smile, her voice smooth and oddly soothing. "We're fine," We've never felt better. Graves' eyes narrowed. What's going on here, Sophie? Why do you look? He stopped himself, realizing how absurd the question sounded. What's happening to you? We're adapting, Marcus, Sophie said, her smile widening as she gestured to the others, who all shared the same unsettling, almost unnatural calm. The planet. It's changing us. It's in the air, the water, the soil. It's part of us now. Elise stepped forward, her brow furrowed. What do you mean, changing? Sophie's smile faded into something more serious, almost distant. I can't explain it all yet. It's like we've unlocked something inside us, a potential we didn't know we had. We're evolving into something more. She looked around at the others, as if conferring the thought with them. Elise's heart skipped a beat. The survivors were changing, becoming something else entirely. They weren't just adapting to the planet. They were transforming into something new. Before she could respond, Jake's voice cut through the tension, his eyes scanning the ruins. We need to get out of here. Now, this place is giving me a bad feeling. But Graves didn't move. He felt a pull, an unshakable instinct, telling him to stay. They were on the edge of something monumental, something that could change the course of humanity forever. What if this is our future? He muttered under his breath. What if we're meant to evolve into something greater? Elise shot him a look, but Sophie's words echoed in her mind. We're evolving into something more. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled again, this time more violently. The pulse of the planet grew stronger, as if it were breathing. And that's when they heard it again, the whisper, louder now, almost demanding. The tremors underfoot stopped as suddenly as they had begun, leaving an eerie stillness hanging in the air. Elise's skin crawled as the whisper faded into silence. She glanced at the others, but it was clear they hadn't heard it, or if they had, they weren't disturbed by it the way she was. The survivors, the blueborn, stood still as statues, their eyes locked onto something unseen, as if waiting for some unspoken signal from the planet itself. Graves spoke first, his voice gruff. We're leaving. Now. Sophie hesitated for a heartbeat, but then nodded. We'll go with you. But Marcus, her voice softened, the earlier calm replaced with a strange intensity. The planet isn't just letting us live, it's giving us something. We're more than we were before. Graves clenched his fists. He didn't like this. He didn't like how quickly the survivors were becoming strangers to him, strangers to themselves. The others were already packing up, the same serene look on their faces, as if they had all come to some kind of agreement without speaking a word. It was unnatural. As they made their way back to the landing site, Graves couldn't shake the feeling that the planet itself was watching them, listening to their every thought. Every step he took felt heavier, as though the world was pulling him deeper into its thrall. Back on the Prometheus, the situation on Earth was rapidly spiraling out of control. News of the survivors' miraculous adaptation had sparked a wave of panic and fascination across the galaxy. The media hailed the human race as the ultimate survivors, the first species capable of truly thriving on the blue Deathworld. But the political factions back on Earth were divided. Some saw the survivors as heroes, others as potential threats. The Galactic Council convened emergency meetings, and a series of covert transmissions began circulating, calling for action. Some factions argued that the blue Deathworld was a gift, a resource to be exploited, with humanity's newfound abilities being used to secure a dominant position in the galaxy. Others, particularly the Intergalactic Peace Coalition, were horrified by the idea of a human race that was not entirely human anymore. At the forefront of the resistance was Admiral Althea Westbrook, an experienced tactician and former ally of Graves. She was one of the few who understood the grave potential of the Blueborn, and she was not willing to let humanity fall into the hands of an unknowable, evolving force. "The Blueborn will change everything," she said to the Council, her voice unwavering. "They won't just change humanity, they'll change the very nature of the galaxy itself." Her warnings were ignored. The Blueborn were considered too valuable to control. As Graves and his team returned to the ship, he knew that a war was coming, not for resources or territory, but for the future of humanity itself. The Prometheus orbited the blue Deathworld like a silent sentinel as the crew regrouped and took stock of what had just happened. Elise stood in the observation lounge, staring out at the planet below, her mind racing. The whispers, the unsettling calm in Sophie and the others, and the undeniable sense that something larger was unfolding, something they couldn't control. "I don't like this," she muttered to herself, turning away from the viewport to find Captain Graves standing behind her, his expression dark. "I don't like it either," Graves said quietly, his voice a rare blend of frustration and concern. He paced the small room, his boots clicking on the polished floor. "Something's not right, Elise. The survivors, they're not just adapting. They're changing, becoming something else. And now the Council is sending reinforcements," Elise finished for him. "I know. It's happening faster than I thought. It's not just a curiosity anymore. It's a movement, a force we're not prepared to deal with." Graves nodded grimly. "The scans we've taken suggest some sort of genetic evolution. I've never seen anything like it. It's as if their DNA is rewriting itself, rapidly adapting to the planet's hostile environment. The strangest part? It's not a natural mutation. It's like they're being guided somehow." Elise frowned, the unease that had settled in her chest since their last encounter growing stronger. Guided by what? The planet itself. Graves met her gaze, his eyes narrowed with uncertainty. "I think so. The ruins we uncovered, they weren't just a relic. They're a blueprint, but template." Suddenly, the door opened, and Dr. Emily Hayes stepped in, her eyes wide with a strange, almost manic gleam. "You need to see this," she said, breathless. "It's not just Sophie and the others. It's happening to us." Elise's heart skipped. "What do you mean, us?" Emily's voice dropped to a whisper. "When I ran some scans earlier, I found that our DNA is starting to change too. We're starting to adapt, just like them." Graves stepped forward, his face topped with disbelief. "You're telling me that we're being altered too?" Emily nodded. "Our bodies are reacting to the planet's atmosphere, the energy it's giving off. It's like we're being reprogrammed. It's subtle, no noticeable physical changes yet, but the scans are undeniable. The planet is influencing us, even from orbit. And I think it's not just biological. I think it's mental too." Graves' gut clenched. Mental. The survivors had already begun to change in ways that made them seem alien, and now they were feeling it too. The realization hit in hard. This was no longer a mission about survival or discovery. This was something more insidious. The Blueborn were no longer just a distant threat. They were humanity's future, and it might already be too late to stop it. The walls of the Prometheus felt closer now, the air thick with tension as the reality of their situation settled in. Elise stood in the communications bay, the latest report from Earth blinking on the screen in front of her. Earth was a world divided, now more than ever, each faction scrambling to take control of the discovery on the blue Deathworld. Some saw the Blueborn as the ultimate weapon, a new frontier for humanity's dominance in the galaxy. Others feared what they could become, knowing that this evolution could spiral out of control. And the message was clear. Time was running out. "We can't wait for Earth to figure this out," Elise said, turning to Dr. Emily Hayes, who stood nearby, her face drawn with exhaustion. "If what you're saying is true, if we're all being altered..." Emily shook her head, cutting her off. "I don't know how far this goes yet, but it's accelerating. I can feel it. My senses are sharper. I can think faster, like I'm more than I was. And that's not even the worst part." Elise frowned. "What do you mean?" Emily's gaze flicked to the viewport, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It's not just our bodies. I can hear the planet. I think we all can now. It's like it's speaking to us. Not in words, but in feelings, in impulses. It's calling us Elise. I think it wants us to stay, to become." Elise swallowed, a cold dread coiling in her stomach. They'd been so focused on the immediate dangers of the planet, the toxic air, the monstrous fauna, the seismic shifts. But this was something new, something deeper. As if in response to Emily's words, the ship shuddered. Elise braced herself, reaching out to steady herself against the bulkhead. The lights flickered briefly, and then the comm system crackled to life. A voice came through, distorted at first, but unmistakable. "Asterisk, you are not alone, asterisk." Elise froze, her heart hammering. It was a voice. Not one of the crew, not one of the survivors. It was other. Did anyone else hear that? She demanded, turning to the crew members in the room. But when they all nodded in unison, she realized the truth. They had all heard it. A voice from the planet itself. "That's not possible," she said, her voice hollow. "We're not alone." Graves' voice cut through the tension, sharp and commanding. "Everyone to the briefing room. Now." The plan was about to change. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for humanity's future. The briefing room was dim, the only light coming from the central holographic display that flickered with data and images from the surface. Graves stood at the front, his jaw tight, his eyes scanning the faces of his crew. The weight of what they were dealing with hung in the air, thick and suffocating. The survivors were changing. The Blueborn were no longer just a phenomenon. They were becoming a new, powerful force. And now, someone was speaking to them from the planet itself. "We have to stop this," Graves said, his voice low but resolute. "Whatever this force is, whether it's the planet itself or something else, we need to shut it down before it spreads." Elise glanced at Emily, who was standing with her arms crossed, staring at the floor. "Emily," Elise said, her voice gentle but firm. "We need to understand what's happening to us. Why are we changing? What is the planet doing to us?" Emily's eyes flicked up to meet Elise's. "I don't have the answers, Elise. But I know it's not just biology. It's like the planet is rewriting us on a genetic level. We're not just adapting to the environment, we're becoming part of it. And I think it's calling us to join it, to become Blueborn." A shudder ran through Elise, and she looked at the others. The crew, the scientists, the soldiers, there was an undeniable sense of calm in their eyes, almost as if they'd already accepted their fate. No one was panicking, no one was protesting. It was as if the planet was quietly taking root in their minds. Graves' fist slammed onto the table, snapping everyone's attention back to him. "We cannot let this happen. I won't let it. The Blueborn might be the future of humanity, but we don't know what they will become. And if they're evolving into something that could threaten every other sentient species in this galaxy, we have to stop it before it's too late." Jake Thorne spoke up from the back of the room, his tone grim. What if we can't stop it? What if we've already passed the point of no return? The survivors are already on their way to becoming something else. And if the planet is calling us all, then maybe it's already too late. Graves didn't answer immediately. He knew what Jake was saying was true. They might be too far gone. But there was something else in his gut, a deep, knowing feeling, that told him if they didn't act soon, the Blueborn wouldn't just be humanity's future. They would be its end. "We're going down," Graves said, his voice hard. "We need to get to the heart of this. We need to find out what's causing this transformation, and we need to end it. If we fail, we'll all become nothing more than echoes of the Blueborn." The Prometheus descended once again, cutting through the thick atmosphere of the blue Deathworld, this time with a sense of urgency and finality. Captain Marcus Graves, flanked by Elise Carter, Jake Thorne, and a small team of scientists, stood at the ship's forward bay, staring down at the shifting, luminous landscape below. They were going straight to the source, the planet's heart. "Everyone knows the mission," Graves said, his voice steady but edged with tension. "We reach the center of the ruins, find the source of the mutation, and shut it down. If it's a signal, if it's some kind of entity feeding off us, we destroy it." Jake nodded but couldn't hide the doubt creeping into his eyes. "And if it's not a signal, if it's something else?" Graves didn't have an answer to that. If it wasn't a signal, if they couldn't sever whatever hold the planet had over them, then they'd have no choice but to destroy the survivors, to destroy what humanity had become. The shuttle rattled as it breached the planet's upper atmosphere, the blue haze outside swirling with electromagnetic storms and strange glowing lights. Below, the ancient ruin that had once been a city stretched out, like the skeletal remains of a forgotten civilization. There was a pulsating energy in the air now, a vibration so strong that it rattled their bones, a rhythmic hum that seemed to sync with their hearts. When the shuttle finally landed, the air was thick with a metallic scent, and the ground underfoot was soft, almost alive. They stepped out onto a platform of strange, iridescent stone. The planet's grip on them was stronger now, the call of the Blueborn echoing in their minds, drawing them deeper. "Stay focused," Graves barked as they moved through the ruins, their boots echoing against the smooth, organic walls. "Whatever happens, we stick together." The deeper they ventured, the stronger the pull became. The ruins loomed like a temple, the pulse of energy reverberating through the stones. They reached a central chamber, a vast circular room that seemed to defy logic. At the center stood a monolithic structure, a towering column of blue light, almost liquid in form, swirling with energy. As they approached, a figure stepped out of the shadows, a familiar face. Sophie Larson, now fully transformed, her skin shimmering with an iridescent glow, her eyes gleaming with unnatural clarity. "You shouldn't have come," Sophie said, her voice like a chorus of whispers. "This is our future, Marcus. This is the next step in human evolution. We are the Blueborn, and soon, so will you." Elisa's breath caught as she felt it, a wave of energy, a pulse that connected them all, pulling at their very souls. The planet was alive, its consciousness now a part of them. The Blueborn had become more than just survivors. They were a collective mind, a singular entity that was no longer human, but something greater. Graves stepped forward, his hand on his weapon. "You're wrong, Sophie. This isn't evolution. It's control, and we're ending it." But Sophie only smiled, her expression serene. "We aren't the ones who need to be saved, Marcus. It's you." The pulse in the air intensified. The chamber trembled. And with that, the last line between humanity and the Blueborn was erased. The end.